The massive space station floated silently against the star-filled darkness. Inside its crystal halls, Ambassador Krel'Thas adjusted his forearms nervously as he read the report on his datapad. Another new species had been found on the edge of known space. They called themselves humans, and their world was named Earth. Krel'Thas sighed through his breathing slits. This was routine work. Every few decades, the Galactic Council discovered another primitive race that needed guidance. The pattern was always the same: offer protection, limit their expansion, control their technology, and maybe in a few thousand years they might earn basic membership rights. According to the scans, these humans were completely ordinary. They were bipedal like many species, had average strength, and lived for barely 100 years. Their technology was laughably primitive. They still used chemical rockets to leave their planet. Their weapons were crude projectile throwers and simple explosives. Nothing threatening at all. The airlock door slid open with a soft hiss. Krel'Thas straightened up and prepared his standard welcoming speech. 5 humans walked through the doorway, wearing simple but functional space suits. The leader was a female with short black hair and dark eyes that seemed to notice everything in the room. "I am Captain Kim Han of the Earth Defense Force," she said with a polite bow. "Thank you for inviting us to your station." Krel'Thas activated the holographic display that showed the grandeur of Council space. Thousands of worlds, massive fleets, and technologies had taken millions of years to perfect fill the air around them. He had given this presentation countless times before. "Welcome to the greater galaxy. Humans, I am Ambassador Krel'Thas of the Galactic Council. We are pleased to extend our protection to your young species. The galaxy can be dangerous for those who are not ready for its challenges." He expected the usual response: awe, gratitude, eager acceptance. Instead, Captain Kim tilted her head slightly and asked a question that caught him completely off guard. "Protection from what exactly?" Krel'Thas blinked his large eyes slowly. No species had ever asked this before. From the many dangers that exist among the stars, hostile aliens, dangerous technologies, the complex politics of interstellar civilization. Another human stepped forward. The translator identified him as Park Suho, and in exchange for his protection, what would you expect from us? This was becoming very unusual. Krel'Thas felt his skin changing color slightly, a sign of stress among his people. The standard agreements, of course. Your military development will be guided by our experts. Your expansion would be limited to systems we approve. Your scientific research will be supervised by council scientists for your own safety. Captain Kim looked at her team, and they exchanged glances that seemed to communicate something without words. "I see. And how many species currently have these protection agreements?" 73 civilizations currently benefit from council guidance. Krel'Thas replied proudly. How many of those have ever become full members of the council? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Krel'Thas felt increasingly uncomfortable. That is a very complex process. Few species demonstrate the necessary wisdom and restraint for full membership. Captain Kim smiled, but it was not a warm expression. "Ambassador Krel'Thas, we appreciate your offer. However, before we can consider any agreements, we need to understand exactly what we would be agreeing to. We would like to review your scientific databases, study how your government works, and learn what full membership actually means." She paused, and her next word sent a chill through Krel'Thas. "We are not looking for protection, Ambassador. We are looking for partnership." Krel'Thas felt his world shift slightly. In 3,000 years of diplomatic service, representing the Council to dozens of primitive species, none had ever questioned their generous offer. None had ever demanded to study Council systems before agreeing to protection. None had ever used the word partnership in their first meeting. That is most unusual," he managed to say. "The protection protocols are quite standard. Perhaps you need time to consider dash." "We have considered," Captain Kim said firmly. "Earth has spent decades preparing for this moment. We know we are not the most advanced species in the galaxy, but we also know we have something to offer beyond just being protected children." Dr. Lee Minho, identified as our scientist, spoke up. "We noticed some interesting details in your faster-than-light travel equations from the public databases. There might be some efficiency improvements possible." Krel'Thas stared at the human. Their species had barely achieved orbital flight, and this creature was suggesting improvements to technology that had worked perfectly for millions of years. As he escorted the human delegation to their temporary quarters, Krel'Thas found himself in completely unfamiliar territory. Every other first contact had ended with grateful acceptance of council protection. These humans had turned his carefully prepared presentation into a negotiation. Worse yet, they seemed to think they had something valuable to offer instead of just being grateful recipients of council wisdom. The human female had used the word partnership as if she actually meant it. That night, as Krel'Thas began writing his initial report, he found himself using words he had never written before. Unpredictable, challenging, and most disturbing of all, potentially problematic. These damned humans were already causing complications, and they had only been aboard his station for 6 hours. 3 days had passed since the humans arrived, and Ambassador Krel'Thas was developing what the humans called a headache. Captain Kim and her team had spent every moment in the Council's public archives, asking questions that made everyone uncomfortable. The morning session started badly and got worse. Dr. Lee Minho, their physicist, stood before a holographic display showing the Council's faster-than-light travel equations. These same equations had powered their civilization for millions of years without question. "Your space-time compression calculations are very impressive," Dr. Lee said politely. "But I noticed something interesting about this constant here." Krel'Thas waved 2 of his arms dismissively. "Those equations have served the Council perfectly for ages beyond counting. Your species has barely learned to leave your home planet." "That is true," Dr. Lee agreed calmly. "But sometimes fresh eyes can spot things that experience might miss. What if this number you treat as constant actually changes based on how many stars are nearby? If I am right, you could use 30% less fuel for the same journey." The Council's chief scientist, Vexandra, had been watching silently from a corner. Her tentacles began writhing in what Krel'Thas recognized as intense excitement. "Show me your work," she demanded. For the next 2 hours, Krel'Thas watched in growing amazement as Dr. Lee and Vexandra filled the air with mathematical symbols and equations. The human was not just understanding their most advanced technology, he was making it better. "This is impossible," Vexandra whispered, staring at the final calculations. "We have used these same equations for 2 million years." "Sometimes you need someone who does not know something is impossible," Dr. Lee said with a small smile. "On Earth, we have a saying, the beginner's mind sees many possibilities, but the expert sees few." That afternoon brought another shock. The Council's trade representative, Morduck, was explaining their resource distribution system when the human economist, Choi Yuna, suddenly interrupted. "These shipping routes," she said, pointing to several trade paths on the galactic map, "they are creating artificial shortages in the outer rim systems." Morduck's crystal body flashed orange with irritation. "These routes have been optimized over countless generations. For the core worlds, yes, but look here." Choi Yuna's fingers move across the holographic display, highlighting different areas. "If you change the shipping schedules and add 3 small waypoint stations in these locations, you can increase supply efficiency to the outer rim by 40% and reduce transport costs by 20%. The silence that followed was deafening. Every council member in the room stared at the human's modifications with expressions of shock. Finally, Morduck spoke in a strangled voice. This would change our entire trade network. The economic impact would be enormous." "In a good way," Choi Yuna said cheerfully. "Millions of beings in the outer systems would have better access to resources, and improved efficiency would benefit everyone." Captain Kim looked around the table at the stunned alien faces. "We are not trying to cause trouble, but when we see systems that could work better, it is difficult for us not to mention it. It is just how we think." Later that day, the pattern continued. The human military advisor, Colonel Jang Dongmin, casually pointed out flaws in council defense strategies that had been considered perfect for millennia. The human linguist, Dr. Kim Soo-jin, suggested improvements to the universal translator that made it work 20% faster. Each time, the humans presented their ideas politely and clearly. They never claimed to be better than the council. They simply saw problems and offered solutions, as naturally as breathing. That evening, Krel'Thas found himself in his private quarters, staring at a report he never expected to write. These humans were not primitive at all. They were something far more dangerous than any hostile alien race the Council had ever encountered. They were innovators. Every system the Council had perfected over millions of years. These humans looked at and asked a simple question: could this work better? And terrifyingly, they were right every single time. Krel'Thas thought about the 73 species currently under Council protection. Not one of them had ever questioned Council methods. They accepted guidance gratefully and followed instructions carefully. They were safe, predictable, and manageable. These humans were none of those things. Dr. Lee had improved their most fundamental technology in 3 days. Choi Yuna had identified flaws in economic systems that had worked for ages. The other humans had found problems and solutions in areas the Council had not questioned in living memory. The worst part was their attitude. They were not trying to prove they were superior. They genuinely seemed to want to help make things better for everyone. When they pointed out problems, they offered solutions. When they suggested improvements, they shared them freely. Krel'Thas updated his report with growing unease. These humans do not seek to conquer or dominate. They seek to improve. This may be far more dangerous to our established order than any military threat. He paused, then added a final note: recommendation, extreme caution. These humans look at our perfect systems and see opportunities for improvement. If they are right, our entire civilization may need to change. That damned human curiosity was going to turn the galaxy upside down, and they had only been here for 3 days. The emergency alarm screamed through the station at 3 a.m. Ambassador Krel'Thas rushed to the crisis center, where panicked voices filled the air and holographic displays showed a nightmare scenario. A deadly plague had appeared on 12 different Council worlds at the same time. The death rate is climbing past 60%, reported Chief Medical Officer Tel Vash, her normally blue skin now pale with fear. This disease is like nothing we have seen before. It changes faster than our medicines can fight it. The assembled Council representatives stood in shocked silence. In millions of years of civilization, they had developed cures for almost every disease imaginable. The idea that something could outsmart their medical technology was terrifying. How long to develop new treatments? Asked Krel'Thas. At the rate this plague adapts, 18 months minimum. Maybe longer if it keeps changing. 18 months. Krel'Thas felt his heart racing. The affected worlds will lose most of their population by then. Captain Kim's voice cut through their despair from the back of the room. Could we examine your medical data? Tel Vash's tentacles curled in frustrated dismissal. Captain, I appreciate your concern, but your species has not even learned to regrow organs. This plague is far beyond anything your primitive medicine could understand. Dr. Han Jiawu is our disease specialist, Captain Kim said calmly. She has some different ideas about fighting diseases that adapt quickly. The human scientist stepped forward with equipment that looked crude compared to the Council's gleaming medical scanners. She was young, with tired eyes but a determined expression. Your treatments attack the disease directly, Dr. Han said, studying the holographic data. Every time you attack it, the disease learns and becomes stronger. What if we stop fighting it directly? Stop fighting a deadly disease? Tel Vash's voice rose in disbelief. Not stop fighting it completely. Change how we fight it. Dr. Han activated her own small projector. Your medical technology is incredibly advanced, but it only works with biology. What if we combine medicine with engineering? She showed them her plan. We introduced tiny robots into the patient's body. These robots do not attack the disease. Instead, they create small changes in body temperature and chemical balance. Nothing harmful to the patient, but the disease has to constantly adapt to these changing conditions. Dr. Han's eyes brightened as she explained. While the disease is busy adapting to the changing environment, we hit it with a mixture of your traditional medicines. The disease cannot adapt to the medicines because it is too busy adapting to the environmental changes. The room fell completely silent. Telvash stared at the human with an expression of horror and fascination. This goes against everything we know about medicine, Telvash said slowly. Sometimes you have to break the rules to save lives, said another human, Dr. Park Sung-min. We have used similar methods on Earth for diseases that resist our antibiotics. You want to put foreign robots inside our patients? We want to save 12 billion lives, Captain Kim said quietly. Dr. Han's method will not interfere with your treatments. We can test it on volunteers first. The argument that followed was intense. Council medical experts insisted the human approach was too dangerous and unproven. The humans argued that 12 billion lives were worth the risk of trying something new. Finally, Kreldaz made the decision. We will allow limited trials. If the human method shows promise, we will expand it. 3 weeks later, Kreldaz stood in the medical center, watching impossible numbers scroll across the displays. The human approach had not just worked. It had worked better and faster than anyone believed possible. The plague that should have taken 18 months to defeat was already retreating on all affected worlds. I do not understand, Telvash said, staring at the data in wonder. How did they know this would work? How did a species with such basic medicine solve what our greatest minds had not? Kreldaz watched Captain Kim working with her team, their simple-looking equipment somehow outperforming technology that had taken millions of years to develop. The humans had not tried to replace council medicine. They had combined it with their own ideas to create something entirely new. I think they do not see it as basic versus advanced, Kreldaz said thoughtfully. They just see a problem that needs solving, and they use whatever tools might work. Dr. Han approached them, looking exhausted but satisfied. The infection rates are dropping on all 12 worlds. Your medical teams have been amazing to work with. They learned our techniques very quickly. Your techniques save billions of lives, Telvash said with genuine respect. Perhaps we've been too focused on perfecting old methods instead of trying new ones. That night, Kreldaz updated his report with shaking hands. The humans do not just think differently. They solve problems we thought were unsolvable. They look at our established methods and ask not, why does this work, but how can we make this work better? He paused and added, most disturbing of all, they share their solutions freely. They do not seek advantage or payment. They simply want to help. That damned human creativity was making the impossible look easy, and Kreldaz was beginning to realize the galaxy would never be the same. The asteroid called KX 7749 was a monster. 17 kilometers of solid metal and rock, racing toward the colony world of Nexus Prime at impossible speed. The evacuation ships were already moving, but the numbers were cruel. They could save maybe 60% of the population if everything went perfectly. Ambassador Kreldaz stood in the command center watching the countdown displays with growing horror. 2 billion people lived on Nexus Prime. Even in the best case, 800 million would die when that asteroid hit. Deflection is impossible, reported Fleet Commander Zor-Alf, his multiple eyes focused on the tactical displays. The asteroid is too big and moving too fast. Our strongest weapons would barely scratch it. Captain Kim had been watching silently from the back of the room. Now she stepped forward with that expression Kreldaz had learned to recognize. The look humans got when they were about to suggest something impossible. What about changing where it goes instead of stopping it? The energy needed would be enormous, Zor-Alf replied dismissively. Even our largest battleships could not generate enough force to move something that massive. What if we did not use ships? Dr. Yang Hyun-soo, the human engineer, activated his portable projector. The asteroid's composition appeared in the air, mostly iron and nickel with pockets of other metals throughout its structure. If we could set off nuclear explosions at specific points along the back edge, Dr. Yang explained, we could create uneven thrust, like a rocket engine, but using the asteroid's own material as fuel. The command center erupted in shocked voices. Kreldaz raised his arms for silence, his skin flushing the deep purple that indicated extreme stress. You are talking about nuclear weapons, he said slowly. The Council banned such devices millions of years ago after the Vortham Wars. For warfare, yes, Captain Kim said calmly. But this is not war. This is emergency engineering. The radiation would make the asteroid dangerous for thousands of years, protested the Council Science Advisor. The asteroid was already going to be dangerous. Dr. Young pointed out with human logic that made Kreldaz's head hurt. It was going to be scattered across Nexus Prime as burning debris. We are just making sure it scatters somewhere else instead. Fleet Commander Zoralth's voice carried complete disbelief. Even if we had such weapons, which we do not, the precision required would be impossible. You would need to place explosives at exact locations while the asteroid moves at 37 kilometers per second. We have 3 ships that can match that speed, Captain Kim said matter-of-factly. An Earth Defense Force carries fusion charges for asteroid mining operations. You are describing a suicide mission. We are describing a way to save 2 billion lives. Our ships have escape pods. The crews can get to safety after placing the charges. The argument continued for hours. Council experts pulled up computer models showing why the plan could not work. The humans responded with their own calculations showing why it would work. Back and forth they went, established science against human audacity. Finally, the mathematics won. The human plan was insane and dangerous and broke every safety protocol in Council history. But it was also the only option that could save everyone on Nexus Prime. 2 days later, Kreldaz watched 3 human ships accelerate toward the incoming asteroid. Captain Kim led the mission herself, along with volunteers from her crew. They had refused all offers of Council assistance, claiming their jury-rigged systems were better suited for precision work. "This is madness," muttered Zoralth. "They're flying towards certain death." "They are flying toward an asteroid that needs to be moved," corrected Dr. Yang, who was monitoring from the command center. "Death is optional." The next few hours passed in tense silence. The human ships matched velocity with the asteroid, landed on its surface, and began placing fusion charges at calculated points. Kreldaz watched the feeds from their helmet cameras as they worked in conditions that should have been impossible. Charges in position, came Kim's voice over the communication system. "All crews have reached minimum safe distance in escape pods." Detonating in 3, 2, 1, the explosion lit up every screen in the command center. When the sensors cleared and the data processed, the asteroid's path had shifted by exactly 0.7 degrees, just enough to miss Nexus Prime by over 2 million kilometers. "Impossible," whispered Zoralth. "They actually did it. They changed the laws of physics," added the science advisor in a stunned voice. "No," said Dr. Yang with a human smile. "They just used physics differently than you expected." That night, Kreldaz sat in his quarters writing a report that would change everything. These humans do not accept that problems cannot be solved. They look at our impossible situations and ask, "Why is this impossible?" Then they prove it is not impossible at all. He paused, staring out the stars where an asteroid that should kill 2 billion people was now harmlessly flying past an empty region of space. "Most concerning of all," he wrote, "they make it look easy. That damned human audacity was making the word impossible meaningless." 6 months after first contact, Ambassador Kreldaz sat in his private quarters staring at a report that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Outside his window, human ships floated alongside Council vessels, their simple-looking hulls somehow representing the most revolutionary thinking in the galaxy. His final assessment glowed on the holographic display. Words he never imagined he would write about any species. Species, humans. Planet, Earth. Recommendation: immediate full Council membership with special status. In 6 months, these beings have accomplished what should have been impossible. They improved our faster-than-light travel by 30%. They solved the Kepler plague in 3 weeks when our best estimate said 18 months. They saved Nexus Prime using methods we have forbidden for millions of years. They have challenged our basic understanding of 17 different sciences. But most importantly, they think differently than any species we have ever encountered. Where we see perfect systems, they see opportunities for improvement. Where we see impossible problems, they see engineering challenges that just need the right approach. They do not seek power or special treatment. Captain Kim and her team have shared every innovation freely with all Council members. They seemed genuinely motivated by making things better for everyone, not by gaining advantage for themselves. Personal note, I have requested permanent assignment as human liaison. Someone needs to prepare the galaxy for whatever these humans will think of next. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Captain Kim's face appeared on his communication screen, and Krel'Thas felt that strange sensation humans call smiling. Ambassador Krel'Thas, we have been studying your terraforming procedures. Dr. Shin Minji thinks she found a way to reduce atmosphere conversion time from centuries to decades. Would you like to see her preliminary work? Krel'Thas felt his skin shifting to the pale blue color that indicated amusement among his people. Of course, Captain. Though I should warn you, the Terraforming Council has used the same methods for 3 million years. Well, Kim said with that characteristic human grin that had become so familiar, maybe it is time for a fresh look. After the transmission ended, Krel'Thas returned his report and added one final section. Additional observations. The humans have a saying on their world, hold my beer and watch this. It appears to mean observe while I attempt something everyone thinks is impossible. This phrase may be the most accurate description of their species I have encountered. They do not accept limitations the way other beings do. When told something cannot be done, they do not argue or complain. They simply find a way to do it anyway. When faced with established systems that have worked for millions of years, they do not show proper respect. They show curiosity. Most disturbing of all, they are usually right. 3 days later, Krel'Thas stood before the full Galactic Council to present his findings. The massive chamber held representatives from over 4,000 species, beings who had collectively governed the galaxy for longer than most stars had existed. Honor Council, he began, I present the case for humanity. The presentation took 4 hours. Krel'Thas showed them the improved FDL equations, the plague cure, the asteroid deflection, and dozens of other human innovations. He demonstrated how each breakthrough had been accomplished not through superior technology, but through superior thinking. When he finished, the chamber sat in stunned silence. You are telling us, said the ancient Vextar representative, that in 6 months, this primitive species has improved systems we perfected over millions of years. I am telling you that they are not primitive, Krel'Thas replied. We made the mistake of measuring their advancement by their technology. We should have measured it by their ability to solve problems. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Some council members argued that humans were too unpredictable, too disruptive to established order. Others pointed out that human innovations had already saved billions of lives and improved efficiency across dozens of systems. Finally, the vote was called. For the first time in recorded history, a species was granted immediate full membership without the standard probationary periods. The motion passed by the widest margin in council history. As representatives filed out of the chamber, Krel'Thas received a message from Captain Kim. Thank you for believing in us, Ambassador. Dr. Shin's terraforming improvements are ready for testing. Also, Dr. Lee thinks he found a way to improve your artificial gravity systems. And Choi Yuna has some ideas about interstellar banking that might interest the Trade Council. Krel'Thas looked up at the stars visible through the chamber's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, human minds were already working on the next impossible problem, the next established system that needed improving, the next challenge that everyone knew could not be solved. He thought about the thousands of species that made up the council, each one content to follow established procedures and maintain stable systems. Then he thought about humans, who looked at stability and asked, but could it be better? The galaxy had spent millions of years perfecting order and predictability. Now it was about to discover what happened when you added a species that specialized in controlled chaos and creative solutions. That damned human curiosity was about to turn the entire universe into an adventure, and Krel'Thas found himself looking forward to every impossible moment of it.